Hey everybody, so this is another one of those special episodes that for some reason never got released on the main show. This is from back when At the Movies was called Shoot the Wiz, and before it was even part of the Skiffy Fanty show. This is the only other one that we've got sort of sitting in the wings that we never released, and so we thought as a nice gift for this week we'd release this. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, I hope it's fun. Please be gentle. We were still figuring out how to even be us. So, yeah, there you go. Enjoy this Shoot the Wiz number 2 on Star Trek Into Darkness.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Never fear change. Life is too short for fear. Chase what is desired.
I can do this all day.
Would you mind identifying what you are?
We're the best friends squad.
That's what we call ourselves. Sort of like a team.
Welcome to the rodeo. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
This is the way.
I have spoken.
Welcome to whatever the hell we're going to call this thing, Shooting the Wiz, I guess, in which we're going to talk about Star Trek Into Darkness, or Star Trek 2, or J.J. Abrams once again messing with canon. He could go by all kinds of different titles, I guess. So my guests today are Paul, which you all know from everything else I do. Hi, Paul.
Hi, guys.
And Jay Garman. Welcome.
Hi. You may have heard me as the annoying guy on some SF Signal podcast, and it's otherwise known as the guy who also bothers John and Elio from time to time.
Glad that you could jump in on extremely short 5-minute notice to join us to talk briefly about Star Trek Into Darkness. I want to warn our listeners we're going to spoil the crap out of this, so...
Yeah, don't listen past this point.
Yeah.
No, we're going to basically spoil everything, I think. So, anyway, why don't we just start the basic premise of the film. So how would we describe the film?
Apologetically?
Sure.
I guess the basic premise of the film is... a terrorist attacks a Starfleet installation at precisely the same moment that I will give Abrams in writing team credit. They addressed the fact that the Jim Kirk at the end of the first reboot film was grossly unprepared for command, and he's just lost it. And by happenstance, or more precisely Deus Ex Machina, he's the one guy who can go after this terrorist for attacking Starfleet installations in London. And from there we proceed down what I would consider a rather ham-fisted 9/11 moralist tale, and round up basically desecrating some of the greatest moments in Star Trek canon. That's the movie in 5 minutes.
So we can tell that Jay really did not enjoy it.
Actually, I did enjoy it up until about the last 5 minutes of the second act, at which point I was filled with nerd rage and wanted to blast a quantum torpedo at the movie screen, but didn't because I don't have those.
Are we talking the giant floating dump truck fight?
No, right before that, when they basically, and here's the giant spoiler alert for everyone listening, when they completely invert the death scene from Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
It came within inches of being comedically a parody. It was a generous description of this film is it's a comic book continuity reboot. For the 5th time, we introduce some element that everyone's done since the Golden Age and the Silver Age. Oh, what's the newest take on the Parasite as he fights Superman? What's the newest Parasite origin story? Well, this is them rebooting Khan, Nooney, and Singh and everything that happened in Star Trek 2. Only the problem is, instead of this being the Alan Moore version, this is the Dan Jurgens version.
Yeah, that's actually probably the one thing I really disliked about the film is that exact moment. Because I didn't have a problem where I recognized they were inverting the death scene. I didn't have a problem with that. It was it was the fact that for me the characters have never seemed to develop yet to the point like when the Star Trek films came out, you had Star Trek Motion Picture and then Wrath of Khan. all of those characters had already been introduced to us, and we had seen through the series, we'd seen Kirk and Spock develop as friends. So by the time we got to the motion picture, we recognized their friendship. Well, these are the rebooted canon. So the first film, the first Abrams incarnation, was the first time Spock and Kirk actually meet. So we haven't had all of that magic time when they've got to play together. So it just didn't seem like they were ready for that moment yet, for there to be that much emotion. Although they acted it really well until Spock screams, "Gone!"
Oh God.
Yeah,
Yes.
which that was the moment at which I realized this is not actually like an honest try to kind of like retooling of a classic concept, but actually almost like unintentional parody, or at worst just really, really a dishonest attempt to like get to the Trekkie fans and give them like their little due, as it were. It did not work.
It's almost like someone filmed fan fiction. Was sort of how I read that, like that one particular scene.
Yeah.
Absent that scene, I really enjoyed the film, and frankly, if they had never revealed that Benedict Cumberbatch's character was Khan, I think it would have been better. Like, it, other than the mythology gag of saying, "Oh, this is Khan," and now we can do a callback to all of that, you gain nothing from it. Like, it doesn't add anything to his character at all, especially within the context of the film. It's just sort of, hey, it's really this guy. You know who this is? It's just like name-checking Section 31 at the beginning of the film. Only that doesn't bog it down in any way when you name-check Section 31, the secret thing from Deep Space Nine, the evil sort of Federation version of the Obsidian Order, as I go way down the nerdoscope there.
Yeah, I got that reference when I heard it. It's like, hey, they're going to Deep Space Nine there. That was cool. And it made sense with this militarized Starfleet. I was okay with that. It's just when, and the reason why we're on this podcast is because I was telling Sean that basically I lost it just about the exact same point you did, Jay. And that's
we all did, it seems.
when they started openly aping Wrath of Khan, putting Kirk instead of Spock. Like, no. You had these great ideas. You had a semblance of a original plot with, I mean, yes, they're highly the mining 9/11, the mining drones. You notice those torpedoes were really let's launch drones at the Klingon homeworld. It was an original plot that we're going to militarize the Federation. At least it was an original plot, and then you decide to hijack pieces of Wrath of Khan and stick them into the movie wholesale. And I thought, no.
Yeah, and I agree with Jay completely that if he had just remained John Harrison, we would have been fine, and you could have avoided. Maybe the only reason they wanted the Khan was because now in this new rebooted like canon, the future Spock, who I love Leonard Nimoy, but I fucking hate future Spock so much. He exists so that young Quinto Spock can ask him, because that's basically. He gets to ask him questions about Khan and how you defeat Khan, which to me kind of, I thought that was a little cheapening as well, because the point of Khan is, at least in the originals and retooling him, would be that he is supposed to be the adversary that they don't know how to defeat him, and so they have to basically dig into like the deep recesses to find the tool. Whereas if you've got your, basically, Vulcan Jesus who just roams around on Vulcan somewhere, right? You can just ask him any questions, and if you just make it seem dire enough, it's Khan. Like, who's Khan? Oh, well, he's the one thing I'll break my rule about, telling you about the future. That's the one, and give him the answer he needs. And why did you need that? Other than just to have Leonard Nimoy hanging out on the set, I guess. But I don't know. Well, I guess it gives an excuse for them to make that the car commercial with the two. Oh gosh, did you see the commercial with both Leonard Nimoy and Quinto?
Yeah, and they're both. It's the Audi commercial, right? Where they Spock versus Spock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I just really did feel too that. The structuring of the final scene. This is why I was telling Paul that there are basically three endings. There is the first ending when the admiral who turns into like military Hitler or whatever. He gets killed, and then Khan gets just like defeated. That's the first one, and then there's like the proper ending with the the reverse of Wrath of Khan bit at the end, and then after that we have yet another huge fight scene when Khan turns out not to be dead and crashes the Dreadnought class starship into the Earth, and it just seemed like if you had just taken 1 and 3 and mashed those together, and then had a version of 2 at the very end, that would have been a much more cohesive plot.
I would agree. Well, and set aside the fact that I really had a hard time watching essentially RoboCop be evil admiral through most of the film. Like that's
that's right. It was Peter Weller.
It's like I can't look at him and not see RoboCop. It's just sort of that's my problem. It's got nothing to do with the film. But it's like, no, you can't win. That's RoboCop. He's you can't beat him. He's RoboCop. But my larger issue is it almost felt like at the inverted death scene, that was the end of the second act, and then we get a really, really short third act, which is basically the flying dump truck fight. And kind of going back to like the Leonard Nimoy thing, that almost screams to me, besides just the cheap mythology gag of bringing in Leonard Nimoy again, like this played like a video game to me. Like, oh crap, I got to go to my side panel and ask the cheat code guy, what do I do on this level? Yeah. And it really played like that. And like that, the end fight sequence, like that totally played like a video game to me. Like there was so much, this was such a kinetic film in the way it was all laid out. It was all about action beats it was all, sort of like playable quest levels. And at some point, Zach Quinto like gets stuck and goes, all right, open up the side panel. You advisor head, tell me how to beat this level. Toggle down to defeat Khan.
Yeah, and it does kind of cheapen his because this is the moment in the film after he's taken over command, or he's given command, because Kirk gives this really great line where he's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I just know what I can do, and he's going to do this whole thing, and Spock is trying to tell him like, this is insanity, and you shouldn't be doing this. It goes against all the blah blah blah, and he basically hands over command because he doesn't feel that he is actually up to the task. This is kind of the humbling of Kirk throughout the film. And it just seems like Spock is supposed to be the one that has his shit together, but like you were suggesting, it is like he's going for his cheat code, and it sort of dampens the character. It takes something away from him. He's supposed to be learning from these experiences too. That's supposed to be part of his development. And it seems like Spock would be the one to figure out, logically, if he desperately wants this, use that against him, because clearly Khan is emotionally compromised.
Well, and to me, the great point of Khan, especially in the original Wrath of Khan, is that he is sort of an amalgam of all the best abilities and worst traits of Kirk and Spock together. And that's why it takes both of them to beat him. He is Kirk's ingenuity and Spock's intellect, and he's none of their moral character. So it takes sort of their combined efforts to defeat him, or in this case, it takes a phone call.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a genius plan. Like you just send the torpedoes that have his. That's another thing too, is that the torpedoes turn out that Khan has stuck his cryogenically frozen brethren inside these. So that's what they do, is they send armed torpedoes and blow up their torpedoes, because that's what Khan wants. Is he wants all his people back, and that's how they defeat him. They use his own desire against him, which is clever, but he didn't have the idea originally. He basically had Spock sit down and here's how you defeat Khan. You gotta do X, Y, and Z, and just find the thing that he wants and smack him in the head with it, and that's it.
He didn't earn it. Like that's what it really comes down to, is he just didn't earn it.
No,
and
he didn't.
See characters overcome obstacles and earn their successes, and they didn't. It's just sort of, he called Dad, and Dad said, "Here's $20 and just buy him off."
No. It's the complete opposite from Kirk, because Kirk is the one that has everything taken away from him, and it feels like he is redeemed at the end.
Yes. Completely.
So, but not Spock, and that's another thing is, in this new universe. I mean, the first film, I have lots of problems. I hate the first film. I should just say, J.J. Abrams pisses me off. I would probably punch him in the face in public if I wouldn't get arrested. And that's not true. I would not punch him. That's not right. But this new universe has now the Vulcan race is, basically decimated. There are probably, maybe like 100,000 of them left. Right. That's it for an entire species gone. And none of that is really discussed at all here. Even though Spock, like, what happens to Spock? Like, wouldn't one of the things that they would want is, like, well, look, we don't have anything in the gene pool. We need more. Like, it goes to the book, Paul and I, Karen Lord's new book, The Best of All Possible Worlds, where they're the species of human, this other version of human, has everything's decimated, and so they're going around trying to find gene pools to bring back as much as they can, and then none of that is even discussed here, even though clearly, like, what exactly happens to Spock?
Yeah, why isn't Spock being sent to the new Vulcan world? Like, you're going to get married and you're going to make babies. Totes sweet. Get out of Starfleet. This is what you're going to do.
Or at least an acknowledgement that we don't want you because you're only half Vulcan and we want to have pure race. They don't mention that either. There's only one mention in the whole thing, which is when Uhura is they have like this amusing kind of fight when they're in the little ship. They're going to go get Khan, and he explains the reason why he didn't show any emotion when he was almost going to die at the beginning of the film, and it's because he watched his whole planet die and he doesn't want to feel that way again, so he chooses not to feel, not because he doesn't care, but precisely because he cares too much, which is nice, but that's the only thing we get.
Well, I think the other issue we're having here is that despite all of the glaring flaws of the first film, it was entertaining spectacle, but there were a lot of logical flaws, as well as in this film as well, is that there's so much potential in this new setup that you can't possibly realize it in a 130-minute film. This screams for a television series to really unpack all of this. Just alone from the first film, what they could have done in the second one, like, there is a future Spock who has all of, like, in the big plot of this film is that Khan has all this advanced knowledge that they can use to build weapons and technology and all this sort of thing. They have a better asset than Khan. They have future Spock, who literally knows all of these events that are going to happen. Not, it's an alternate timeline and everything is exactly the same, but, like, he knows the exact date the Romulan star is going to explode. That is crucially important.
He knows about the Borg.
Tell the Romulans that. He knows how to build all kinds of future technology. He knows all sorts of other key pieces of information, and he's on your side. You don't have to go and awaken Popsicle of Doom to go. Got a dude who can do that, and he's on your side.
But do they know? That's the thing. My understanding was at the end of the first film, he only reveals himself to like a couple people.
Well, but we've also established that the Zachary Quinto Spock puts everything in his reports.
That's right. So,
I mean, Spock knows how to make red matter, which makes black holes. It makes the Genesis device look like a pop gun. He's got that in his pocket. And if that got out at all, everyone was going to want him. The Klingons, the Romulans, whoever, pick a race. He is the most valuable asset in the quadrant, in the galaxy, because of what he represents.
And there's a plot line for you that you don't even have to have Khan. Have people going after Spock, the older Spock. Hey, we just come up with a better plot than J.J. Abrams did in 2 minutes of time.
Well, I said after I saw that first film that they should just hire me to do the movies, because I would not have had in the first film the ridiculous future Spock moment where, haha, I'm going to spend 10 minutes explaining what happened while you all were away. And by the way, you're going to be best friends with my young self because that's the way it is. I'm like, no, now that this whole universe is fucked up, they don't actually have to ever be friends. They could just be, like, totally hate each other. That's fine. But, yeah.
And that kind of ties back to what you were talking about, the inverted death scene. It's not even about the actors. It's that we clearly established in this film that they aren't really totally friends yet.
Right, they're just developing. It's clear that they're friends and that they do care about each other, but it's not that same level of depth. They're not there. And that's partly because in the first film, they'd only sort of kind of come to sort of like each other. but not really. And not that much time has really passed.
Well, in the film's defense, not really defense, but I think the first part of the film, the whole volcano thing, is supposed to be the shorthand for how they get to start to work on their relationship. The whole volcano thing and rescue, and Spock wanting to break the Prime Directive to freeze the volcano, and Kirk wanting to break the Prime Directive and saving him. And I think that's supposed to stand in for years of development between the original ones and the original timeline. But it's a tiny little bit, and it's not enough, and to really establish these characters as having a relationship that, when we ape the Wrath of Khan scene, that means anything.
Yeah.
It's just gimmickry. It doesn't have any emotional punch to it.
Yeah, and that should be, like, we keep mentioning the beginning of the film, the opening main scene when Kirk and Spock are there is the stuff you've seen, some of the clips you've seen in the trailers where they're running on that weird world with like red trees and they jump into the ocean. That turns out to be that they've shown up at some relatively primitive race who's about to be destroyed. Their entire world's going to be destroyed because this volcano is going to explode, and they decide to get involved. But of course, it's Kirk, so he gets a little too involved, and then of course reveals his spaceship to the aliens, and they apparently like start worshiping the ship, which I thought was amusing. And then he gets in trouble. He gets in deep trouble. He has the ship taken away from him. And then of course Pike dies in this, which is an emotional moment. Very sad.
Death of the father figure. This movie wants to be about family in such a big way, and it just does not really. I mean, we have Starfleet officer Mickey and his family and wanting to help his daughter, and we have
Starfleet officer Mickey, because you recognize he's from Doctor Who.
Exactly. What is Mickey doing in Starfleet? I'm sorry, but yeah, and then we have Khan and his family, and if I can grasp about that for a second, in Wrath of Khan at least, we know that Khan cares because his wife died and he's really upset about that, and half of his crew died because of Ceti Alpha 5, and we've got only back to Spacey that he cares about the people. Here we never get any emotional connection between him and his 72 corpsicle family. We have no idea who's in there, what their relationship is. Are they all Khans, or they're just all super beings? Why does he care? We're not given the stakes to really appreciate that he cares about these people. So when the gambit actually is used, okay, it just seems so much like just like moves in a chess game rather than an actual emotional connection.
Jay?
There's a lot wrong with this film, and I think we've pounded it pretty hard, and I agree with Paul completely about the overuse of the family metaphor, but the film is not entirely without merit. In fact, if you go to all the stuff in all the B plots, they're actually pretty good. Like Simon Pegg has a great sort of turn as Scotty, they've terribly underused John Cho because his version of Sulu is really compelling in my opinion. And if for everything else J.J. Abrams has gotten wrong, that he's gone out of his way to give Uhura agency. Like, she is an important contributing character that drives a lot of parts of the plot and has her own desires, her own motives. And if anything, they did too good a job with her, because the introduction of Alice Eve as Carol Marcus, when you put her in the same movie as this version of Uhura, Alice Eve looks completely two-dimensional. Her character just does not hold up to the standard set by Uhura. It's like, I'm mad at Dad because he's not being the person I thought he was, and so I'm going to sneak on the ship and be completely, she's just basically a plot device who occasionally lost trips to her underwear at one point.
Yeah, I appreciate her being hot, but yeah, that was just Miss fan service moment and not necessary.
Yeah, it was gratuitous. It was a kind of pointless scene. I also didn't. I mean, you're right, Jay, that her character is really not really important. Because the only thing that she offers, the really sad thing is there are only two things she offers to this film. She offers expertise so that they can open the torpedoes, which they could have just done by keeping Scotty on, but I guess that would change some of the plot later. But whatever. And she offers them like 30 seconds of stall time when she's talking to her father. But that's it. I mean, that father-daughter narrative is really not crucial to the plot. They could have changed it. They could have just left it out. I mean, maybe that her purpose is to make the Admiral seem like he has more than one dimension. But
yes, I think that
one of the things that really puts me off is that they sort of are in, J.J. Abrams, Kirk and Spock must be friends. Kirk must be a captain. It's his destiny. Kirk and Carol Marcus have to get together and have a son. It's their destiny. Like, the whole point of the reboot timeline is that they don't have a destiny. Like, that's sort of the whole freeing aspect of it.
Right, they could do anything. They could completely uproot everything. And they don't. They're constantly like going back to this kind of nostalgia stuff, which is why when we were talking earlier, I really just wish he had just stayed John Harrison and not have become Khan. If they could have picked new villains, I don't know. I do kind of like the reimagining of the Klingons, though, which we only get to see them very briefly, but they were kind of cool.
I completely agree. I think the visual reimagining of everything, sort of refreshing the whole palette and aesthetic of the universe, was very overdue, and especially the Romulans in the last film, I thought they were fantastic as well. But they, for all of it looks different, they don't want to change anything of substance about the films. Like, they're absolutely terrified of making anything too different. It's just sort of, what if we did Wrath of Khan again, but with a Star Wars design aesthetic? That's the whole movie.
That's a really good way of putting it.
Which explains why J.J. Abrams is going to be doing Star Wars. So why don't we actually take a minute and take a break from battering the film? Because, like Jay, you'd mentioned earlier, we are being kind of mean to the film. But, like, let's actually go back and talk about the things that we actually enjoyed. And, Jay, you had brought up Simon Pegg. And the thing that I really loved about his character is that in a lot of the original Star Trek, like, Scotty's there, he gets a few lines, he gets to be cute sometimes, but he's not as important to, like, he's important to the narrative because he fixed the ship and shit like that, but he's not as integral to the narratives as Simon Pegg's Scotty is here. I mean, literally half the film can't happen without Scotty in this particular movie. And I really enjoyed that. Also, I love his little relationship with, like, the little short dude, which for some reason that short creature thing can't talk, so he becomes like this just adorable face that looks back at him with those black eyes, and he just talks to himself, basically. It's really cute, and there's just these funny moments, and I think, like, his version of Scotty is I feel like I actually like Scotty more in this than I did in the originals, which I'm sure Trekkies are going to now hunt me down and kill me. But I really like his character. That's something I like.
I'll let Paul take first crack here because I've been jabbering on.
Right. Okay. And ironically, the one thing I wanted to bring up was something Jay already mentioned, and is that's the Uhura as a character has a lot more dimension and depth than I could have hoped for, and what we see for a lot of the TV show and the movies, except in fitful spurts. We see Uhura get characterization and development, and here she's a full-fledged character. I'm not going to edge this into a dislike, but it almost feels like the whole, I mean, Star Trek fans know about the whole Kirk, Spock, and McCoy triad, and here the movie feels a lot more like a Kirk, Spock, Uhura triad, and McCoy feels almost like a fourth banana in that relationship. She's the really one that's getting between the two of them. She's the one that's interacting with the two of them. I mean, the scene on the little shuttle as they're going down to Kronos. That's in the original series. That's McCoy, Spock, and Kirk having conversations and bantering back and forth and having disagreements. And here they put Uhura in the role, which is good at. We get female character development, and Zoe Saldana is a good actress, and I appreciated them taking the time for that. And as Jay pointed out, Alice Eve, as nice as she looks in a bikini, just does not have any characterization compared to her Zoe Saldana in this film. None whatsoever.
Although she's joining the crew, so maybe in the next movie she'll get more.
Yeah, I saw that. Like, okay, so yeah, they're gonna have the two of them hook up, and they're gonna have a son, and bad things are gonna happen. Oh, we're gonna have Genesis in the next movie, or
maybe she hooks up with McCoy.
McCoy was flirting with the guy. It is a good point. It would be nice if they actually went that way and decided to break canon and have McCoy pursue her. That would be nice. Because McCoy's a divorcee. He needs some love too.
Yeah,
right.
And there's already there's their little moment together with the torpedo. I thought that's was a little romantic in a kind of death-defying way. Playing with a giant phallic symbol. Anyway, Jay, what about you? What's something that you really like that you haven't already mentioned?
Well, actually, playing off that, I would watch Carl Urban has sort of turned into one of my favorite actors right now between Judge Dredd and his turn in Red and this film. I think part of the reason, to Paul's point, this really was a Kirk, Spock, Uhura triad. But I think the other reason for that is that Carl Urban is so charismatic, more so than Chris Pine. He dominates the scenes subtly in so many ways that they almost had to go out of their way to pull him away from Quinto and Pine, just so those two guys could be more credible as Kirk and Spock. I really felt that was almost conscious, that they put him in scenes with other people because he's so good at what he's doing.
Yeah, he is really good at McCoy. Remarkably good. I mean, it's sometimes hard to imagine that this is the same guy who was in the Rohirrim all those years ago as his first major role, and here he is, McCoy, and his dialogue, and even the intonation in his voice, he really becomes a character.
He very much does, and this is very tangential, but I've seen the preview for his supposed new series on Fox, Almost Human, where he's basically playing an amalgam of McCoy and Judge Dredd, and it's the problem is he's going to be really good at that, and so we're definitely not going to get any sort of Star Trek television show with him in it, because he's going to be really good in that Almost Human show, and it's going to get picked up.
Oh,
I hadn't heard about this. Yeah, that sounds box office though.
Yeah, that would be really cool. One of the other things that I really liked, it's something that, despite the lens flares, which has now become such a common thing to make fun of, I do appreciate that when there is space battle-y stuff, that it is more energetic and faster. Like in the originals, I think largely because of the time and what could be done. They had the big lasers and they'd shoot torpedoes, and it would take 45 minutes for them to have one space battle. Because it just takes so damn long. But in these, the Enterprise gets pounded, and the speed with which they're shooting, and the kind of the scope of it, I feel, is a lot more energetic. It gives more life to those scenes. It's kind of with the Star Wars series, I have the opposite, where I really loved all the space battles in the originals and hated the lightsaber, and then they made the lightsaber battles really energetic with these new ones, and so I started hating all the space battles, and I just wanted them to fight with lightsabers all the time. It's kind of this same thing. Oftentimes the hand-to-hand fights are not as interesting as these just really grand space battles with just incredible explosions and weapons fire. I really like that. Or even when the Dreadnought class crashes into the city was really cool, I thought, despite the fact that it comes as the third ending of the film. But yeah, a lot of that visually is just really cool, and I like that. So
one minor thing I appreciate about this film, and I might be one out of 1,000 people who see this film that pick it up, is they've stolen some of the stuff in this film in a nice way from Starfleet battles. I'm by the silence from the two of you, I guess you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Nope.
Oh, I know what Starfleet battles is.
Right. Dreadnought class. And not to mention the Klingon D4 Birds of Prey. I mean, that's all straight out of those are basically were fast patrol ships running around Kronos. It's like they're stealing stuff from Starfleet battles. I appreciate that. It doesn't get enough love these days because it was an overcomplicated game. It is overcomplicated game, I guess it's a lot. But I appreciated they were willing to borrow some of that stuff for this movie. If only the Dreadnought had 3 engines, though. It should have had 3, not 2. But now I'm getting into real deep geekery again. My apologies.
What did you guys think about the general plot of the film? Just more generally, not necessarily the pacing, but the plot in general.
Paul, you first.
Well, okay. Well, I appreciate until we got into the problems with it. I appreciate some of the way they were going with this. The whole in the destruction of Vulcan, the Federation has gotten more militaristic, and now we have a power mad admiral who is pushing the Federation even more in that direction. It was until things started dissolving, I thought this is new and different. They're going to make the Federation is being sculpted in a new way. They're using drones. They're making clear analogies to 9/11, but they're doing it in an interesting way. They're talking about real world concerns in the future, which is what Star Trek is all about. So until things fall apart, I was down with the plot. I mean, Khan turning them on turning on them on the ship. Okay, I was expecting that. So for the most part, I was happy with the plot as it was. It's just until the last part and things fell apart completely. I thought this is a really well done Star Trek movie, plot wise as well as most other things with all the niggles.
There were some gaping plot holes here that. Go read Phil Plate's review on Slate, the Bad Astronomy column, where he basically says, I'm not going to go through the science here because the science is terrible, but I am going to go through all the gaping plot holes. So we don't have to enumerate them, but there are some. But to Paul's point, I liked that this was a film that was about something. It was what Star Trek's supposed to be. It's making a point. It's allegorical to a contemporary issue through the lens of science fiction. I don't think it was greatly well executed, but I was extremely gratified that they understood Star Trek is about making those sort of points, that it takes moral positions and examines moral issues, as opposed to the first film, which was, wow, this guy killed your mom and my dad, let's go kick his ass.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly the questions about. There's even, if you stayed for the credits, there's a reference to the 9/11 victims somewhere in the credits. I think it's fairly early in the credits. There's a little thing where they put the little caption up that dedicates the film to them. So it was clear that on some level the writers of the film had always considered that it was going to be in some way a commentary on terrorism. And not in any sort of like really just kind of simplistic, stupid way, which it happens a lot where you get movies like, let's just have a bomb go off and it's terrorism, and that's it. It's certainly trying to get into the psychology behind that, and particularly with Harrison, or Khan, I guess we should just call him Khan, but Khan, yeah. But I also really appreciated the militaristic side because on the one hand we're supposed to think of the general, he's just a bad guy and you're just supposed to beat bad guys and that's it. On the other hand, you kind of can't disagree with him because his logic, however sort of quick it is given to us, it makes total sense. I mean, we're now living in this new Star Trek universe where people supposedly from the future have destroyed an entire planet and killed everyone on it with the exception of a handful. So they've committed genocide. The Klingons, the Admiral basically says at one point, we're going to war with them at some point. It's going to happen. So like we're just kind of dilly-daddling and farting around trying to delay the inevitable. All of that going on, and then of course even with Harrison, with the Khan, with the terrorist attacks, kind of bring it all to a head. It becomes really clear that the Starfleet's probably going to have to become more militarized to combat this. Otherwise, I mean, what are they going to do in this new future?
Well, and there's one of Simon Pegg's great scenes is when he's refusing to take these drone weapons onto his ship.
Yes.
And he actually has this conversation with Kirk, like they're acting like we're a warship. Is that all we are now? And that's sort of this moment that I love that they have Scotty have that statement, because he's not just an engineer at that moment. That it's clear that he's about more than just machinery. It's because he's actually saying, I don't want these cool toys on my ship.
Well, his reasons is because they won't release how they work. So they're basically just putting a bunch of materials on his ship, which tell him by the fact that they're being silent about what's in them, that are probably far more dangerous than they're letting on. You know, because it's not just they're not normal torpedoes. Because he knows what's in a normal torpedo. He knows how those work. But they refuse to give him the information on how these work. And that becomes the kind of like the line at which he won't cross. Because now it's like you're basically being handed anything. It could be a planet buster. It could destroy an entire planet and you wouldn't even know.
Yeah, for all he knows, there's red matter in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, I wouldn't blame Scotty having that anywhere near his ship. 72 torpedoes full of red matter? Yeah. I will not sign for these. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, that was a great moral stand. I mean, granted, having been able to communicate across light years with a communicator was really dumb and stupid and really annoyed me. But having having him principal walking off the ship was another highlight of the film. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's not get into all the if he can transwarp to Kronos. Like, one of the key points of the plot is they took Scotty's transwarp technology and now they can put it in a backpack. And it's a key thing that they've done, which never comes up again, by the way. So, you know, if he could go to Kronos, if Khan can escape Earth and go and beam directly to the Klingon homeworld from the surface of Earth.
Why do they need to send the Enterprise?
Exactly. Like, why can't we just go ask Scotty to beam him back? Or somebody. Like, those level of plot holes make it not hang together, and it just sort of Abrams' solution to that is if we just keep the action moving fast enough, you won't ever have time to question it.
My understanding, though, is in the film they send the Enterprise, or the Admiral sends the Enterprise, because it's intended to be a trap. Granted, there's still a plot hole there. I mean, because basically they could have stopped and went, wait, why would we? This doesn't sound right. Why are you sending us? Doesn't make any sense. But that is his reasoning. Is he's sending them there to go get Harrison, but he just wants them to blow him up and be done with it. And then they're supposed to basically start the war by getting involved.
Well, I think the larger issue is that this device sort of like negates the need for starships. Like, once you've established that like this kind of device can exist, it's like it unravels all kinds of other stuff too.
It also just doesn't make any sense because I don't know. It just why do we even need that? I don't know. It just seems kind of pointless.
It obviates the need for starships. If I want to explore a distant planet, okay, I scanned it, I put the backpack on, and we send an away team. It's like having a Stargate, except even better.
Right, but I mean, just the idea that you can transport somebody that far. Because they go to Kronos, which is, you know, that's many light years away.
Well,
you know, that takes a starship like months to get to, or it's supposed to anyway.
It's supposed to, yeah. This movie has no sense of scale of where Kronos is in relation to Earth, really. I mean, it looks like it takes them 5 minutes to get there and 5 minutes to get back, and suddenly we're in the Earth back above Earth for the big battle. That really annoyed the crap out of me, and we've descended into disliking again.
Yeah.
And we're at about 48 minutes, so maybe we want to wrap this up.
Yeah, well, why don't we wrap it up? Yeah, okay. So, all right. So, what would you all grade it on, like, a traditional, like, A and to F scale? So, Paul?
I liked some of the visuals. I did like the movie, even with its gaping science plot holes, until that last act where things went completely in the toilet. So, I'm going to give it a B.
B. All right. Jay?
I'm a harsh grade, and I would give it a C+. It's not a failure, but it's not a grand success. And I think the worst thing I'm going to say about this film is if Abrams makes 2 or 3 more, or someone succeeds him in this reboot universe, will have forgotten about Into Darkness and just won't even remark about it in the near future. So it's just sort of, it's passable.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think originally I said like an A- B+, but that was like fresh out of the theater. Now having discussed it and thought about it more, I'm leaning. I think I would give it a B. In link with Paul, and that should people should take that as I like this clearly a lot more than the last one, because I despised the last one so much that I think I gave it like an F. So moving to a B is pretty good, and I think partly because I really did enjoy the film, despite the problems. And maybe in another year I'll regrade it and I'll give it a D-, and then we'll move on with our lives. But yeah. So all right. Yeah, I'm just teasing it. Anywho, so thank you, Jay, for coming on. Let us know where people can find you on the internet.
You can find me at jgarmin.net. I am very Googleable.
Excellent. And Paul, just so everybody knows, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter as Prince J Vistin. That's PRINCEJVSTIN. They can find me at SF Signal, The Functional Nerds, and of course, Skiffy and Fanty.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, thank you again, and we'll maybe do this for another film in the future, like Man of Steel.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Sean.
Yep. If you would like to support this podcast, you can do so at patreon.com/SkiffyandFanty. You can also find us on our website, skiffyandfanty.com, and on Twitter at skiffyandfanty. If you'd like to send us an email, you can do so at skiffyandfanty@gmail.com. The music for this episode comes from Sphere by Creo. You can find out more about their music at freemusicarchive.org.